I know that the God of the Bible exists. Hi, welcome to Spotlight on the Word. This begins a series of lessons on answering the atheist. At the end of the day, the Christian will be well prepared to give a defense for the hope that is in him. You can access all the videos in this series in a playlist called Answering the Atheist on our YouTube channel. In September 2018, I had opportunity to debate on this topic at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. A link to this debate is found in the description area. Due to the poor lighting and sound, my first affirmative statement was not captured in the video. Not to worry, I'll be presenting this affirmative statement today. So don't leave this channel, subscribe and share with others if you find our lessons helpful. Indeed, I'm very glad to have the opportunity to be discussing this topic once again. I know that the God of the Bible exists. Every precisely stated proposition is either true or false. The proposition, I know that the God of the Bible exists, is precisely stated. Therefore, either God exists or he does not exist. Of all the things that will be said in this particular discussion, I call your attention to a statement made by Max Black, professor of logic at Cornell University. He says, 400 pages of crowded facts and arguments may deceive the very elect, but when reduced to 3-line syllogism, will lay bare the bones of the argument and expose the fallacious reasoning involved in it. It is therefore important to understand the terms in every proposition. So let's look at our definition of terms. When I say I know, what I'm trying to say is that this is a knowledge claim that is based on true evidence and not some leap into the dark or some kind of blind faith. You realize that at the end of this discussion, the atheist rather has the blind faith. When I talk about God, I'm referring to a disembodied spirit who is incorporeal and infinite in all his attributes. By incorporeal, I mean that he's not subject to material testing. When I talk about the Bible, I'm speaking about the 66 books inspired by God Almighty, beginning from Genesis down to the book of Revelation. Exist, that is to say that God is an eternal spiritual reality. And so please take note of this for me. I'm therefore saying in a thoroughgoing theistic fashion that I know that the God of the Bible exists, without a doubt. To come to this conclusion, one needs to reason well. That is, you need to apply the law of rationality and discard irrationality. In his book, God and Philosophy, Dr. A.J. Flew made a very remarkable statement that I'd like us to look at concerning rationality and irrationality. He says concerning rationality, that we should draw only such conclusions as are warranted by the evidence. And to be rational, he said, is to refuse to consider relevant evidence, although knowing it to be relevant, to accept one position while refusing to accept its plain logical consequences, or while insisting also on holding something else flat inconsistent with it, and so on. Now, let's examine the behavior of the skeptic towards one like myself. It's either they do not understand the evidence we present, which I doubt on the part of many atheists, or they understand the evidence yet reject it. Please, I'd like to note that this is irrational, illogical, and unscientific for them to do. Now, I'd like us to focus on the importance of this particular discussion. If the atheistic view is true, then during our lives here on earth, we are nothing but organized matter. Our creator has been rocks and dirt. Everything we are and do is a result of dead, non-intelligent, non-purposive matter. And the fourth one is that there is no real objective right or wrong, good or evil. And the fifth one is that no one has any real obligation to do anything or not to do anything. So what we are saying is that if the position of the atheist is true, it would mean that the atheist can't tell me that I am wrong to believe that there is God. Neither can I tell the atheist that he is wrong to believe that there is no God. Please understand the importance of this. It's very, very key in our discussion. If the atheistic view is true, then we have a lot of issues to deal with. Why are we saying this? Then it means that if a young man enters any building, enters your house and pulls out a gun and shoots all your children and kills everybody in your house, you can't tell the person that he is wrong, because dead rocks and matter are the ones informing his decision. And you can't also tell a gentleman that he is wrong for raping a young lady. You can't also say that. Why? Because for the atheistic position to be true, you can't hold anybody responsible for anything at all. And so this is very important for us to note. Again, it would mean that physical death is the absolute end to each and every one of us. Once you die, that is it. And you realize that the reason why some people would like to incline themselves towards atheism is that they do not want to be responsible for their actions. If they want to just be free, and in most cases, they want to satisfy themselves sexually whenever and however they want. And so please take note of this for me as well. And the last point is that no matter how we may have acted, there will be absolutely no accounting, no judgment, no punishment at all if the atheistic view is true. And this is one of the reasons why some people like to be atheists. Why? Because they do not want to be responsible for their actions. They do not want to be responsible for their actions. But that can't be the case. Now, note also that if the theistic position is also true, if my position is true that yes, indeed, God exists and that there is evidence to prove his existence, then these are the implications of such a position. It means that our creator is God, and that God in this case is the God of the Bible. We will prove that by the time we end our discussion today. And that there is real objective right and wrong, good and evil, and that morality is not subjective. It's not dependent on you or dependent on me, but rather there is a standard, there is an objective standard for right and wrong. The third point is that we have a real obligation to obey the will of God. If my position is true, then you need to obey the will of this particular being who brought you to this earth. You have that responsibility to do that. The fourth point is that each and every one of us will live on after this life is over. This physical life is not the end to humanity. Life goes on into the spiritual. And so if my position is true, then this is the implication of that as well. And the last point to note is that each of us must give an account to God for how he has lived. If my position is true, then you have a burden. Then I have a burden to give an account for everything that we have done on this particular earth. We would account to that person. And this is what most people do not like. And because of that, they intentionally pretend like there is no evidence for the existence of God. Now, I'd like you to note my obligation today. I am here to affirm the proposition I know that the God of the Bible exists. I am not obligated by this proposition to defend certain aspects of Christian theism, but only that which relates directly to the proposition. I am not here to defend any denominational type religion, no. I do not endorse it, neither do I teach it. Jesus Christ spoke against denominationalism. His apostles denounced it, and is very, very inconsistent with truth as revealed in the Bible. I am not here to defend the evil or wicked things done in the name of religion, but to present evidence that warrants the conclusion the God of the Bible exists. I am here to state realities and facts that are devoid of logical contradictions. Now note this, any doctrine that implies a false doctrine is itself false. Also, note that the materialist would want to subject God to the empirical test, but God is incorporeal. That is to say that you can't subject God to the physical test we have in the lab. Like you want to taste God, you want to smell God, you want to hear God, you want to see God. No, God is incorporeal, so you can't subject him to empirical test. Oh, does that mean that we cannot prove his existence? No, I will be proving his existence through logical argumentation. This is due to the fact that true science and religion are not contradictory, but they actually bed fellows. Now to the real issue in this particular discussion. We exist, the universe exists, and that is an empirical fact. The only philosophical and scientific option available to us is this: is either creation or evolution. For Adolf Hoffman, that is the atheist I debated, to know there is no God, he must be omniscient. That is, he must be acquainted with every force, know every cause of existence, understand all elements of truth at every point in time. Hoffman acknowledges his finite knowledge. God then exists beyond his limit of knowledge. If Adolf lays claims on omniscience and says based on his knowledge that God does not exist, he still wouldn't have proved his position, because he would be God himself and would be denying his own existence. And that would be very, very interesting to do. In attempting to prove the unprovable, every atheist and Adolf Hoffman finds themselves in a prison with no doors or windows. Now let's look at the chart I used in the debate. In his debate with Dr. Thomas B. Warren, a preacher of the Lost Church, Dr. A.G.M. Flew, a world-renowned atheist of the 20th century, was imprisoned in this same room some 44 years ago, in 1976. And on 13 September 2018, Adothe Hoffman found himself in this same prison due to his false position. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to submit to you that anybody who claims to be an atheist is found in the same prison. Hoffman is in the innermost prison, and the only way he can arrive at atheism is to come through all the walls. But I submit to you that he cannot come through any of them. He can't, not even a single one. For him to arrive at atheism, he needs to prove that matter is eternal, which he can't. He needs to prove that life on earth originated from dead rocks and death, which he can't. He needs to prove that consciousness came from that which had no consciousness. And also, he needs to prove that conscience came from that which had no conscience. He needs to prove that intelligence originated from that which had no intelligence. And finally, he needs to prove that human beings, that is you and I, originated from that which was not human. I humbly submit to you this day that no atheist can prove any of this. No atheist can prove any of this. Now, I will be stating a sound argument whose conclusion is, I know that the God of the Bible exists. My major premise is hypothetical, and the second premise is stating the fact of the argument. Therefore, the conclusion is an affirmation of the minor premise. Adothe's responsibility was to prove that the fact of the above argument is false. But I submit to you that he could not do that, and no atheist can do that. I humbly challenge anybody. Let us now point to one of the most powerful arguments for the existence of God, the law of cause and effect. It states that every material effect must have an adequate antecedent cause, that is, the cause that comes before the effect. Material effects without adequate causes do not exist on this earth. The universe is a material effect. Therefore, it needs an adequate antecedent cause, one who is intelligent, moral, conscious, or powerful to have brought this universe into existence. Now let's turn our attention to the next chart. What caused the universe to come into existence? There are three probable answers that are given. It's either the universe is eternal, or 2, the universe created itself, or 3, the universe is not eternal and it did not create itself, but rather was created by somebody or someone superior to itself. The first answer is false. In his book, God and Astronomers, Dr. Robert Jastrow made this comment. Now, 3 lines of evidence, the motions of the galaxies, the laws of thermodynamics, and the life story of stars pointed to one conclusion. All indicated that the universe had a beginning. If the universe is not eternal, then it should have created itself from nothing. That is according to the second answer on the chart. Now, it is very clear that the first 2 answers are not adequate and accurate answers to the question that we have asked. Option C is the only logical, rational, and scientific answer to choose. Another strong argument for the existence of God is the argument of design, which is also called the teleological argument. If the universe shows evidence of definite and intelligent design, then it must have a designer. The universe does show evidence of definite and intelligent design. Therefore, the universe must have had an intelligent designer. This designer is either mechanistic forces of chance and nature or an incorporeal self-existent ultimate mind. Now, concerning origins, there are only 2 ways of arriving here. That is to say, how did human beings arrive here on this earth? There are only 2 possibilities. Either we were created or we evolved. C stands for creation, E stands for evolution, T stands for transmutation, and G stands for God. So now let's pay attention to this particular chart. From this illustration, you should understand that it is either we were created by a being who is not natural, thus an intelligent, self-existent, eternal being, or we evolved from dead rocks and death through random mechanistic chances over millions and millions of years, as the atheists would want us to believe. Point 2. If by creation, then God exists. But if by evolution, then it occurred by transmutation. Unfortunately, transmutation has been proven to be unscientific and unprovable. Unfortunately, transmutation has been proven to be unscientific and unprovable. Therefore, evolution is false and cannot occur according to our point 5. Since evolution is false, we are left with only one option from point 1, creation. Point 7 on the chart confirms that if creation is the only alternative, then God exists, and my proposition is proved. Let us now examine some of the evidence available for the design in the universe. Did you know that our universe operates using exact scientific laws? The precision of the universe and the exactness of these laws are just amazing. Scientists are able to launch rockets to the moon and back with the full knowledge that they will land within a few feet of the intended target. The precision, complexity, and orderliness within the universe is so clear that there is no dispute about it. We live in a tremendously large universe. It is estimated that the diameter of the universe is over 20 billion light years. A light year is the distance light travels in 1 year, moving at the speed of more than 186,000 miles per second. Yet, Hoffman and his colleague atheists would want you to look at all this and accept that it just happened from nothing. Who is taking a leap into the dark, ladies and gentlemen? Who is having a blind faith? The atheist or the theist? In her article on space.com, that is dated March 19, 2018, Elizabeth Howell made this observation. The universe contains about 100 billion galaxies and an estimated 25 sextillion stars. This is so enormous. The Milky Way, that's our own galaxy where we live, contains over 100 billion stars that it would require 100,000 light years to travel across it. Did they just come into existence by mechanistic chances? This is an impressive universe. The temperature inside the sun is estimated to be over 20 million degrees Celsius, and the Earth is located at exactly the correct distance from the sun to receive proper amount of heat and radiation to sustain life. Move the Earth 10% closer or 10% away from the sun, and life will be impossible on the Earth. Rotating on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator and simultaneously moves around the sun at 70,000 miles per hour. That is approximately 90 miles per second. What sustains this rotation is Earth's single relatively large moon. What would happen if the rotation rate of the Earth were cut in half or doubled? What do you think? Well, if it were halved, the seasons would be doubled in length, which would cause such harsh heat and cold over much of Earth that it would be difficult to grow enough food to feed the Earth's population. Richard Dawkins noted in his book, The God Delusion, in page 137, he said, the massive gravitational vacuum cleaner of Jupiter is well placed to intercept asteroids that might otherwise threaten us with lethal collision. This gives us more details about how Earth is protected by the neighboring planets. Again, did you know that 90% of our oxygen comes from the tiny plants in the seas? If our oceans were much smaller, we soon would be out of air to breathe. Can a rational person reasonably conclude, given the evidence, that these exact requirements are just met by accident or chance? Sir Fred Hoyle, a brilliant physicist and astronomer, said that the idea of randomness and disorder somehow giving rise to design or order is like saying that a tornado could sweep through a junkyard and assemble a Boeing 747 from all scraps. What this brilliant scientist is saying in a nutshell is that orderliness doesn't rise from disorderliness. It is never possible. Like entropy, everything heads towards chaos. Now note that the statistical improbability of the universe. Please note, the statistical improbability of the universe just happening is staggering. This brilliant physicist from MIT had this to say: the exquisite order displayed by our scientific understanding of the physical world calls for the divine. Yes, indeed, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, so that they are without excuse. After many years of research, writing and debating, the world-renowned atheist Dr. A.G.N. Flew said this before he died: I have followed the argument where it has led me, and it has led me to accept the existence of a self-existent, immutable, immaterial, omniscient being. How do we know that this God is the God of the Bible and not any other God? The answer is very simple. This God sent forth his only begotten Son into this world. That man is Jesus Christ. His coming to this earth to live amongst men is proof that yes, the self-existent, immutable, immaterial, omniscient being is the God of the Bible. If Hoffman or any other atheist will follow the argument where it leads, then they will realize the truth that yes, indeed, the God of the Bible exists. In our next episode, we will look at the argument Hoffman brought up in our debate. But it is sad to say that he failed to deal with all that I said. He didn't even touch one of my arguments presented here. And that was a simple task in the debate we had. Till we meet again, please remember, talk is cheap. Evidence always concludes. Send us your questions and objections, and don't forget to visit any Church of Christ near you if you have the opportunity. God bless you and keep you. This has been your friend, Derek Danso, signing out. Bye-bye.